The warning lights flashed red across the control panel as Captain Hyun-woo struggled with the ship's controls. Sparks flew from the navigation system, and the smell of burning circuits filled the small cargo vessel. His hands moved quickly over the buttons, trying to stop the hyperdrive from completely failing. "Come on, new soul," he whispered to his ship. "Don't give up on me now." The ship shook violently as it dropped out of hyperspace. Through the front window, Hyun-woo saw a red planet growing larger and larger. The surface looked rough and dangerous, with dark forests and jagged mountains. This was not where he was supposed to be. His cargo run from Earth to the mining colonies should have been simple. Food supplies, medical equipment, and communication devices. Nothing fancy, nothing dangerous. But now his hyperdrive was dead. His navigation system was broken, and he was falling toward an unknown world. Hyun-woo checked his star charts quickly. The planet showed up as Kethvar in his database. The file was marked with warning symbols. "Hostile environment," it said. "Dangerous wildlife. Avoid contact." The ship's engines coughed and died. Hyun-woo was going to crash, and there was nothing he could do about it. He strapped himself into his seat and prepared for impact. Far below on the planet's surface, Warlord Vextar stood on a high stone platform overlooking his domain. His 6 arms were crossed, and his yellow eyes watched the falling star in the sky. His scaled skin was dark green, and his body was built for hunting. Like all Kethavarians, he was a predator. "A gift from the sky," Vextar said to his lieutenant. "It has been too long since we had proper prey." The lieutenant, a younger Kethavarian named Gordon, nodded eagerly. "Should we send the hunters to capture it immediately, Warlord?" "No," Vextar said with a cruel smile, showing his sharp teeth. "Let it live. Let it think it has a chance to survive. The hunt is more enjoyable when the prey believes it can escape." Vextar walked down from the platform toward the great hall where the other Kethavarian leaders were gathering. The hall was built from dark stone and decorated with the bones of creatures they had hunted. Torches burned along the walls, casting dancing shadows. Elder Huntress. Narquin was already there, sharpening her claws on a rough stone. She was old, but still deadly, with scars covering her arms from countless hunts. "I felt the ship enter our atmosphere," she said without looking up. "What manner of creature crashes onto our world?" "The sensors show it is bipedal," Vextar replied. "2 arms, 2 legs, soft skin with no natural weapons. It will be perfect for training our young hunters." Another elder, Morthek, raised his head from where he was examining star charts. He was the oldest among them, with white scales along his spine showing his great age. "The ship's design is unknown to me," he said quietly. "This creature comes from far away." "All the better," Narquin said with satisfaction. "Our young need to learn how to hunt unfamiliar prey. This soft skin will teach them well." The Kethavarian society was built around hunting. Their children learned to track and kill before they learned to speak properly. Their greatest heroes were those who had brought down the most dangerous prey. Their gods were hunters who stalked across the stars. When a new creature arrived on their world, it was seen as a test from those gods. The hunt would determine the creature's worth and grant honor to whoever claimed its life. On the planet's surface, Hyun-woo's ship crashed through the red trees of the forest. The metal hull scraped against rocks and branches before finally coming to rest in a small clearing. Steam rose from the broken engines, and various fluids leaked onto the ground. Hyun-woo woke up slowly. His head hurt, and he could taste blood in his mouth. The emergency lights were still working, casting a dim glow inside the ship. He unbuckled his safety harness and tried to stand, wincing as pain shot through his left shoulder. The ship was badly damaged but not completely destroyed. The cargo hold was intact, which meant his supplies were safe. The communication system was broken, so he could not call for help. The life support was working, but barely. Hyun-woo grabbed his emergency kit and checked its contents. water purification tablets, basic medical supplies, a small energy weapon, and some emergency food. It was not much, but it would have to do. He tried to open the main door, but it was stuck. Using a metal bar from his toolkit, he managed to pry it open enough to squeeze through. The air outside was thick and humid, with a strange, sweet smell that made him feel uneasy. The forest around him was unlike anything he had seen before. The trees were tall with red bark and black leaves. Strange purple vines hung down like curtains. In the distance, he could hear sounds that were definitely not friendly. Roars, clicks, and calls that spoke of dangerous creatures. Hyunwoo was a practical man. He had served in the Earth Defense Force before becoming a cargo pilot. He knew how to survive in hostile environments. The first rule was simple. Find water. Find shelter. Avoid being eaten. As he gathered supplies from his ship, Hyunwoo did not know he was being watched. High in the red trees, a Kethvarian scout observed every move he made. The scout had been following the crash site since the ship landed. The scout's name was Kev Dahl, and he was young by Kethvarian standards. This would be his first major hunt, and he was nervous. The creature below looked weak and helpless. It had no claws, no fangs, no natural armor. How could hunting such a thing bring honor? But Kev Dahl followed his orders. He watched the creature work to repair part of its ship. He saw how it tested the air before breathing deeply. He noticed how its eyes constantly scanned the forest for danger. This prey was careful. That was unusual. Back in the Great Hall, Vexitar was explaining the rules to the young hunters. 20 of them sat in a circle, their yellow eyes bright with excitement. They wore simple leather armor and carried traditional plasma spears. "The hunt begins at dawn," Vexitar announced. "The creature will have until then to prepare itself. You will track it, corner it, and claim its life for the glory of our people." "What if it tries to leave the planet?" asked one young hunter. "Its ship is broken," Narquin replied. "It cannot escape. This world will be its grave." The young hunters roared their approval. They had been training for this moment their entire lives. Tomorrow they would prove themselves as true Kethvarian warriors. Elder Morthek remained quiet during the celebration. Something about this felt different. The creature in the forest was not behaving like typical prey. Most aliens who crashed on Kethvar either panicked or gave up in despair. This one was building something. As night fell over the red forest, Hyunwoo finished his work. He had managed to create a small shelter using pieces of his ship and materials from the forest. It was not much, but it would keep him dry and hidden. He ate a small portion of his emergency food and tried to rest. Tomorrow, he would explore more of the area and look for a way to signal for rescue. He did not know that rescue would not be coming. He did not know that in a few hours, he would become the hunted. But Hyunwoo was not just any prey. He was human, and humans had their own way of dealing with predators. The first light of dawn painted the red forest in shades of crimson and orange. Hyunwoo had barely slept, listening to the strange sounds of the night. Creatures howled in the distance, and something large had crashed through the trees nearby, around midnight. This world was definitely not safe. He packed his small shelter quickly and efficiently. Everything had to fit in his backpack: water, food, medical kit, tools, and the small energy weapon. He looked at his crashed ship one last time. The metal hull was already being covered by fast-growing purple vines. Hyunwoo started walking deeper into the forest, away from the crash site. His military training told him to put distance between himself and any obvious landmarks. Predators always returned to where they first found their prey. He did not know how right he was. In the Great Hall, Warlord Vexitar stood before the 20 young hunters. They were eager and excited, their claws sharp and their plasma spears charged. The morning light streaming through the stone windows made their scales shine like armor. "The hunt begins now," Vexitar announced. Remember the sacred rules. The prey must be given a chance to run. You will track it fairly. You will corner it with skill, and you will claim its life with honor." The young hunters roared their agreement. This was the moment they had trained for since childhood. Today they would prove themselves as true Kethvarian warriors. Kevdal was among them, but he felt nervous rather than excited. He had watched the strange creature all night through his scope. It had not panicked like other prey. Instead, it had worked calmly to build shelter and prepare for survival. This was not normal behavior. "Track it by scent first," instructed Narquin. "Its alien smell will be easy to follow. Drive it toward the crystal canyons where it cannot escape, then close in for the kill." The hunters moved out in formation, following the trails through the red forest. Their natural tracking abilities were excellent. They could smell where the creature had walked, see the broken twigs where it had passed, and hear the faint sounds of its movement ahead. But as they followed the trail, something strange began to happen. The first sign of trouble came when young hunter Pextar stepped into what looked like solid ground. The earth gave way beneath him, and he fell into a pit filled with sharp wooden spikes. He cried out in pain as the spikes pierced his leg armor. "How did this happen?" demanded Scorvin, the hunt leader. "This pit was not here yesterday." The other hunters helped pull Pextar from the trap. His leg was badly injured, and he could not continue the hunt. As they bandaged his wounds, they realized the truth. The prey had made this trap. "Impossible," said Thekran, another young hunter. "Prey does not hunt the hunters. It runs and hides and dies." But the evidence was right in front of them. The pit was freshly dug, carefully hidden with branches and leaves. Sharp wooden spikes had been cut from the red trees and hardened in fire. This was the work of an intelligent creature that understood hunting tactics. Scorvin sent 2 hunters back to the settlement with the wounded Pextar. Now they were down to 17 hunters. The prey had drawn first blood, and it had not even been seen yet. They continued following the trail, but now they moved more carefully. Their excitement was replaced by caution. This hunt was not going according to plan. Meanwhile, Hyunwoo was learning about his new environment. He had found a stream of clear water and filled his bottles. The water tasted strange, but was not poisonous according to his testing kit. He had also discovered several plants that his scanner said were edible. More importantly, he had been studying his hunters. Hyunwoo knew he was being followed. The signs were obvious to someone with military training. Broken branches at the wrong height, disturbed earth, and the faint sound of movement behind him. But these hunters were not very good at staying hidden. He had counted at least 15 different sets of footprints at the crash site. They were large, with claw marks, and they moved in an organized pattern. These were intelligent predators who hunted in groups, but intelligence could work against them too. Hyunwoo found a good position on high ground where he could observe the forest below. He waited patiently until he saw movement in the trees. Large shapes moving through the red forest, following his trail exactly. They were big, he realized, much bigger than humans. 6-limbed like some kind of reptile with natural armor and weapons, but they were also loud and careless. They moved, like creatures that had never been hunted themselves. That was their weakness. Hyunwoo started moving again, but now he had a plan. Instead of just running, he began to set traps along his path. Simple ones at first, a rope snare hidden in tall grass, a balanced log that would swing down when triggered, a patch of slippery mud disguised with leaves. The hunters kept following, and they kept walking into his traps. Hunter Vortek got caught in the rope snare and hung upside down from a tree branch for 20 minutes before the others could cut him down. Hunter Nexcar was knocked unconscious by the swinging log and had to be carried. 3 more hunters slipped in the mud trap and fell into the stream below. Each trap was simple, but each one removed hunters from the pursuit. More importantly, each trap showed that the prey was thinking ahead, planning, and fighting back. Back in the Great Hall, Elder Morthek was receiving reports from scouts who were watching the hunt from a distance. What they told him was troubling. "The creature is not behaving like prey," the scout reported. "It sets traps. It studies our hunters before acting. It moves with purpose, not panic." Morthek nodded slowly. In his long life, he had seen many hunts. Prey always acted the same way. They ran, they hid, they fought desperately when cornered, and they died. This creature was doing something different. It was hunting the hunters. "Should we end the hunt?" asked the scout. "Not yet," Morthek replied. "But send word to Warlord Vextar. He should know what is happening." In the forest, the remaining hunters had finally cornered their prey in a crystal canyon. The walls were too steep to climb, and there was only one way out. Scorvin smiled with satisfaction. Finally, the hunt would end properly. "Surrender, soft skin," he called out in the common galactic language. "Your traps were clever, but now you are trapped. Die with honor." Hyun-woo stood at the back of the canyon, apparently with nowhere to run. But he was not afraid. Instead, he was looking up at the canyon walls with interest. "You know," he said calmly, "I used to work in mining operations. You learn a lot about geology and structural engineering." The hunters did not understand what he meant until it was too late. Hyun-woo had spent the morning placing small explosive charges from his ship's emergency kit at key points along the canyon walls. When he pressed the detonator, the carefully planned rockfall blocked the canyon entrance, trapping the hunters inside while he escaped through a hidden cave passage he had discovered earlier. As the dust settled, Scorvin realized the horrible truth. The prey had not been trapped at all. They had been the ones walking into a trap, and now they were the ones who were trapped. From high above the canyon, Hyun-woo looked down at the confused and frightened hunters. He had food, water, and a secure position. They had weapons, but no way out. "Let me know when you want to talk," he called down to them. Then he disappeared back into the cave system, leaving the hunters to think about their situation. For the first time in Kethvarian history, the prey had captured the hunters, and the real hunt was just beginning. 3 days had passed since Hyun-woo trapped the hunters in the Crystal Canyon. The situation had changed completely from what anyone expected. The prey was now in control, and the hunters were learning what it felt like to be helpless. Hyun-woo spent the first day exploring the cave system above the canyon. The caves were old and went deep into the mountain. Fresh water flowed through some tunnels, and strange glowing crystals provided light. It was a perfect hiding place, but hiding was not what Hyun-woo was planning to do. On the second day, he started watching the trapped hunters more carefully. They were getting hungry and thirsty. Their emergency supplies were running low. Some of the younger ones looked scared and confused. They had never been in a situation like this before. Hyun-woo could have left them there to die. It would have been the smart thing to do. These creatures had been trying to kill him after all. But that was not the human way. Instead, he started studying them like he would study any problem that needed solving. The hunters were big and strong, but they were also wasteful. They drank too much water and ate their food too quickly. They did not know how to make their supplies last. More importantly, they seemed to know nothing about the plants and smaller animals around them. This gave Hyun-woo an idea. On the third day, the trapped hunters woke up to find bundles of food lowered down into the canyon on ropes. At first, they thought it was poisoned. Why would their prey give them food? "It is a trick," said Scorvin, the hunt leader. "The soft skin wants us to lower our guard." But the younger hunters were too hungry to care about tricks. They examined the food carefully. It was made from local plants, processed in a way they had never seen before. It smelled good and looked safe to eat. Young Kevdal was the first to try it. The food was not only safe, but more filling and nutritious than anything he had eaten before. "This is better than our hunting rations," he said. in amazement. "How is that possible?" asked another hunter. "We are the greatest predators on this world. How can prey make better food than we can?" From above, Hyunwoo called down to them. "Because you only know how to take life," he said in simple galactic, common language. "I know how to support it." The hunters looked up at the cave entrance where the voice came from, but they could not see him clearly. "What do you want from us, creature?" Scorvin demanded. "I want to understand you," Hyunwoo replied, "and I want you to understand something important. You are dying." This confused the hunters. They were not injured badly. They had water from the stream in the canyon. "What do you mean?" asked Kevdal. "Your people are starving," Hyunwoo explained. "Not today, not tomorrow, but slowly over many years. You hunt everything, but understand nothing about how to make food last or grow more food. Your children are weak because they do not get the right nutrition." The hunters did not want to believe this, but some of them had noticed problems in their settlements. The young ones were smaller than their parents. Hunting trips had to go further and further to find good prey. Food was becoming harder to find. "You lie," said Scorvin. "We are the strongest hunters in the galaxy." "Strong hunters who cannot feed their own children properly," Hyunwoo replied. "I have been watching. Your people, your traditional ways are killing you slowly." Over the next few days, something strange began to happen. Instead of trying to escape or fight, some of the younger hunters started asking questions. They wanted to know how Hyunwoo had made the processed food. They were curious about the water purification system he had built. They asked about the tools he used and the plants he gathered. Kevdal was especially interested. "How do you know which plants are safe to eat?" he asked. Hyunwoo showed them his scanner and testing kit. "I test everything before I use it. I study how things work. Before I make changes, your people just hunt and eat. You never learn about the world around you." This was a completely new idea for the Kethvarians. They had always believed that taking life was the only way to gain strength. The concept of growing food or processing plants into better nutrition was foreign to them. But the evidence was right in front of them. The food Hyunwoo made was keeping them healthier than their own rations had. On the 7th day, a terrible storm hit the forest. Rain poured down like waterfalls, and lightning split the sky. The canyon began to flood as water rushed down from the mountains above. 3 of the hunters were swept away by the sudden flood. Hyunwoo watched from his cave as Kevdal jumped into the rushing water to save them, but the young Kethvarian was not strong enough to fight the current. Without thinking, Hyunwoo rappelled down into the canyon on a rope. The water was cold and dangerous, full of sharp rocks and debris. But he was a good swimmer and knew how to handle emergency rescues. He reached Kevdal just as the young hunter was going under for the 3rd time. Grabbing him firmly, Hyunwoo swam toward higher ground, where the other hunters could help pull them both to safety. All 4 hunters survived because of Hyunwoo's actions. As they sat shivering in the shelter, Hyunwoo had quickly built from cave materials. Kevdal looked at the human with new eyes. "Why did you save us?" he asked. "We came here to kill you." "Because that is what my people do," Hyunwoo replied simply. "We help others survive, even our enemies. It makes everyone stronger in the end." This concept was revolutionary to the Kethvarians. In their society, strength came from defeating others, not from helping them. But here was proof that helping others could create a different kind of strength. Word of these events reached the main settlement through the scout reports. The elders were divided about what to do. Some wanted to send more hunters with better weapons. Others were starting to think that maybe this situation needed a different approach. Elder Morthek was especially thoughtful. "Send no more hunters," he decided. "I will go to see this creature myself." "That is dangerous," warned Narquin. "This prey has already proven it is cunning and deadly." Exactly, said Morthek, which means it is intelligent enough to talk with. And if it is intelligent enough to save the lives of those who came to kill it, then maybe it is intelligent enough to teach us something we need to learn, Warlord. Vextar was not pleased with this decision. We are hunters, not students, he growled. This soft skin makes our young weak with its strange ideas. But Morthek had already made up his mind. The next morning, he set out for the Crystal Canyon alone, carrying only a translator device and a white flag of truce. For the first time in Kethvarian history, an elder was going to negotiate with prey instead of hunting it, and in the canyon below, Hyunwoo was teaching young hunters how to build water filters and process nutritious food from plants they had never thought to eat before. The hunter was becoming the provider, and everything was about to change. Elder Morthek arrived at the Crystal Canyon just after sunrise. He was old, even by Kethvarian standards, with white scales along his spine and deep scars from countless hunts. But his yellow eyes were still sharp, and his mind was still quick. He stood at the edge of the canyon and held up the white flag of truce. "I am Elder Morthek," he called out in galactic common language. "I come to speak, not to hunt." From the caves above, Hyunwoo observed the old Kethvarian carefully. This one was different from the young hunters. He moved with wisdom rather than aggression. His body language showed respect rather than hostility. "I will meet with you," Hyunwoo called back. "But only you, and you must leave your weapons behind." Morthek removed his plasma spear and ceremonial hunting knife, placing them on the ground. Then he climbed carefully down into the canyon, using the rope that Hyunwoo lowered for him. The meeting took place near the small stream that ran through the canyon floor. Hyunwoo had prepared a simple seating area with flat stones and had brought water and food. It was a gesture of hospitality that surprised the old elder. "You treat me as a guest rather than an enemy," Morthek observed. "This is not what I expected from our reports." "Your young hunters came to kill me," Hyunwoo replied calmly. "But you came to talk. I respond to the intention behind the action." Using the translation device, they began to communicate more clearly. Morthek was fascinated by human concepts and ideas. He had lived long enough to see problems in Kethvarian society that the younger generation ignored. "Tell me about your people," Morthek said. "How do you make food from plants? How do you purify water without hunting? These are not skills we possess." Hyunwoo explained human agriculture and resource management in simple terms. He showed how different plants could be processed to create complete nutrition. He demonstrated water filtration systems that could be built from local materials. Most importantly, he explained the concept of sustainable resource use. "You take only what you need today," Hyunwoo said, "but you never think about what you will need tomorrow. Your hunting grounds get smaller every year because you kill everything without allowing it to reproduce." This was a painful truth that Morthek had noticed but never fully understood. "Our ancestors taught us that the strong survive by taking from the weak," he said. "It has always been our way." "Your ancestors lived on a world with unlimited prey," Hyunwoo replied. "But that world is changing. Climate shifts, resource depletion, and overhunting are making survival harder. You need new strategies if your people are going to survive." As they talked, Morthek began to see his world through different eyes. The human was not weak prey at all. He was a problem solver, a teacher, and a provider of solutions. These were strengths that Kethvarian culture had never recognized or valued. "What do you propose?" Morthek asked finally. "Let me teach your people new ways to find and process food," Hyunwoo said. "Let me show you how to build systems that provide resources without destroying the environment. In return, I ask only for the chance to repair my ship and leave peacefully." It seemed like a fair exchange, but Morthek knew there would be resistance from the traditional leaders. "Warlord Vextar will not accept this," he warned. "He believes that accepting help from prey makes us weak. Then he will watch his people slowly starve while refusing to learn how to feed them properly. Hyunwoo said sadly. Sometimes leaders have to choose between tradition and survival. Their conversation was interrupted by urgent calls from the canyon rim. A scout had arrived, with terrible news. A plague had broken out in the main settlement. The youngest Kethvarians were falling sick with a disease that their traditional medicine could not cure. Morthek's face went pale beneath his scales. "The children," he whispered. "If we lose the young ones, our people will not survive." Hyunwoo had seen similar diseases during his military service on agricultural worlds. The symptoms the scout described sounded like a bacterial infection that attacked malnourished immune systems. It was exactly the kind of problem that proper nutrition could prevent and treat. "I might be able to help," Hyunwoo said carefully, "but I would need access to your settlement and permission to work with your healers." "Vextar will never allow it," Morthek said. "He would rather see the children die than accept help from an outsider." "Then we need to convince him," Hyunwoo replied, "or find a way to help the children without his permission." The urgency of the situation changed everything. Morthek made a decision that went against thousands of years of tradition. "I will take you to the settlement," he said, "as my guest under my protection. If anyone objects, they will have to challenge me directly." It was a dangerous choice. If Vextar decided to fight, Morthek was too old to win, but the elder was willing to risk his own life for the sake of the children. They gathered the young hunters from the canyon and began the journey back to the main settlement. Along the way, Hyunwoo continued teaching them about plant identification and food processing. The hunters were eager students now, having experienced the benefits of his knowledge firsthand. Kevdal had become especially skilled at identifying edible plants and building water filtration systems. "Will you teach our healers these methods?" he asked. "If they are willing to learn," Hyunwoo replied. "But change is always difficult for people who are comfortable with old ways." As they approached the settlement, they could see smoke rising from many buildings. The plague was worse than anyone had reported. Kethvarians were carrying sick children between buildings, and the sound of mourning calls filled the air. Vextar met them at the settlement gates. His face was dark with anger. When he saw Hyunwoo walking freely among the hunters, "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. "Why does prey walk in our settlement like an honored guest?" "Because this prey might be able to save our children," Morthek replied firmly. "And if you care more about tradition than about their lives, then you are not fit to lead." The confrontation that followed would determine the future of both species. Vextar had the support of the traditional warriors, but Morthek had the support of the desperate parents whose children were dying. In the end, it was the voice of a child that made the decision. Vextar's own youngest offspring, a small Kethvarian, named Rexel, was brought out on a stretcher. The child was barely conscious, burning with fever and struggling to breathe. "Please," the child whispered to his father, "let the strange one help. I do not want to die." Faced with his own child's plea, even Vexitar could not maintain his rigid stance. "One day," he said grudgingly. "You have 1 day to prove your methods work. If the child dies, you die with him." Hyunwoo nodded grimly. 1 day to save not just a child, but an entire civilization's willingness to change. The real test was about to begin. Hyunwoo worked through the night in the settlement's healing chambers. The sick children lay on stone beds, their small bodies fighting a disease that their immune systems were too weak to handle. The traditional Kethvarian healers watched nervously as the human examined their patients with strange devices. "The infection is bacterial," Hyunwoo explained to the head healer, an old female named Thelara. "But the real problem is malnutrition. Their bodies do not have the strength to fight because they have never received proper nutrition." Thelara was skeptical. "We feed our young the finest meat from our hunts," she said. "How can they be malnourished?" "Meat alone is not enough," Hyunwoo replied patiently. Growing bodies need vitamins, minerals, and other nutrients that only come from plants. Your people have ignored an entire category of food that is essential for health. Working with materials from the forest and basic chemistry equipment from his ship, Hyunwoo began preparing treatments. He processed certain local plants into concentrated nutrients that could boost immune system function. He created antibiotic compounds from tree bark and root extracts. Most importantly, he developed a nutrition supplement that could provide the missing elements in the Kethvarian diet. The work was dangerous. One mistake in the chemical processing could poison the patients instead of healing them. But Hyunwoo had dealt with similar situations during medical emergencies on frontier colonies. He knew what he was doing. As dawn approached, he had prepared enough treatment for all the sick children. But giving it to them was another problem entirely. "You want us to feed poison plants to our dying young?" Vextar demanded when he saw the green liquid treatments. "This is madness." "This is medicine," Hyunwoo replied calmly. "But I understand your fear. I will test it on myself first." Before anyone could stop him, Hyunwoo drank a large portion of the plant-based medicine. The Kethvarians watched in silence, expecting him to collapse or show signs of poisoning. Instead, he remained healthy and alert. His scanner readings showed that his body was absorbing and processing the nutrients effectively. After an hour of observation, it was clear that the treatment was safe. "Now will you let me give it to the children?" Hyunwoo asked. Reluctantly, Vextar agreed, but he made it clear that if any child died, Hyunwoo would be executed immediately. The treatment began with the sickest patients. Hyunwoo carefully calculated dosages based on body weight and symptom severity. The plant-based antibiotics began, fighting the bacterial infection while the nutritional supplements gave their immune systems the strength they needed to recover. By midday, several children were showing improvement. Their fevers dropped, their breathing became easier, and they were able to take liquid food for the first time in days. By evening, even the most critical patients were stable and recovering. The success was undeniable, but it raised difficult questions for Kethvarian society. "How is it possible?" asked Thelara. "We have been healers for generations, but we never knew plants could be used this way." "Because your people have always focused on taking life instead of supporting it," Hyunwoo explained. "You never studied how to help things grow and become healthy. You only learned how to hunt and kill." The implications were staggering. If plants could be used as medicine, what else had the Kethvarians been missing? How many of their people had died from diseases that could have been prevented or cured? Word of the miraculous healing spread quickly through the settlement. Parents who had expected to lose their children were now watching them play and eat normally. The impossible had happened, and it had come from the most unlikely source. But not everyone was pleased with these developments. A group of traditional warriors, led by Vextar's Lieutenant Gordon, met in secret that night. They believed that accepting help from prey was making their people weak and dependent. "This soft skin is destroying our way of life," Gordon argued. "Our young hunters ask more questions about plants than about hunting. Our healers want to learn his strange methods instead of following the old ways. Soon we will be farmers instead of warriors." The traditionalists decided to take action. They would capture Hyunwoo and force him to leave the planet, even if it meant some children might get sick again. They believed it was better to maintain their pure warrior culture than to become dependent on outside knowledge. But they had not counted on the changes that were already taking place among the younger. Kethvarians, Kevdal, and several other young hunters had been practicing the skills Hyunwoo taught them. They could now identify medicinal plants, build water purification systems, and process food in ways that provided better nutrition. These abilities made them more effective providers for their families and communities. When the traditionalists moved to capture Hyunwoo, they found their path blocked by these young hunters. "Stand aside," ordered Gordon. "We are removing this contamination from our people." "No," said Kevdal firmly. "This human saved our children and taught us how to save ourselves. He is under our protection." The confrontation that followed divided the settlement into two camps. The traditionalists, who wanted to maintain the old ways of pure hunting, and the progressives, who wanted to learn new methods of survival and provision. The conflict came to a head when Vextar himself was forced to choose sides. His own child, little Rexil, had recovered completely thanks to Hyunwoo's treatment, but his cultural beliefs told him that accepting help from prey was a sign of weakness. "Father," Rexil said to him, "the strange one made me better when I was dying. Is that not a good thing?" "He is not one of us," Vextar replied, struggling with his own conflicted feelings. "But he helped us when we could not help ourselves," the child pointed out with simple logic. "Is it not strength to learn from those who know things we do not?" Out of the mouths of children came wisdom that the adults had been too proud to see. Elder. Morthek stepped forward to address the entire settlement. "We stand at a crossroads," he said. "We can continue the old ways and watch our people slowly weaken and decline, or we can learn new ways that will make us stronger and healthier." "What does this human want in return for his knowledge?" asked a worried parent. "Nothing," Morthek replied. "He asks only to repair his ship and leave in peace, but he is willing to teach us everything he knows before he goes." The vote that followed would determine the future of Kethvarian civilization. By a narrow margin, the progressives won. The settlement would officially request Hyunwoo's help in developing new survival strategies. Vextar, faced with the democratic decision of his people and the evidence of his own child's recovery, reluctantly agreed to the arrangement. But he made it clear that he still had doubts. "Prove that these new ways truly make us stronger," he challenged. "Show us that we can remain warriors while also becoming providers." "I will," Hyunwoo promised. "But first, let me show you how to make sure this plague never returns." The great experiment was about to begin. An entire alien civilization was going to learn how to transform from pure predators into sustainable providers. And it all started with one human who refused to be just prey. 6 months had passed since Hyunwoo crash-landed on Kethvar. The Red Forest looked the same, but everything else had changed completely. Where once there had been only hunting camps, now there were small agricultural settlements growing food. Plants that had been processed and improved through human knowledge. The Kethvarian children were stronger and healthier than any generation before them. They still learned hunting skills, but they also learned how to identify medicinal plants, build water filtration systems, and process food for maximum nutrition. The plague had not returned. Hyunwoo stood on a hill overlooking the main settlement, watching young Kethvarians tend to their first experimental crop fields. It was a sight that would have been impossible to imagine when he first arrived, predators learning to grow their own food instead of just taking it from others. "The transport ship will arrive tomorrow," said Kevdal, approaching from behind. The young Kethvarian had become Hyunwoo's most dedicated student and closest friend. "Are you certain you want to leave?" The rescue ship had finally responded to the automated distress beacon that Hyunwoo had repaired and modified. After months of silence, contact with the outside galaxy had been restored. "My cargo company is probably wondering what happened to their pilot," Hyunwoo said with a smile, "and there are other worlds out there that might need help too." But the truth was more complicated than that. Hyunwoo had found something on Kethvar that he had never expected. He had found a purpose beyond just delivering cargo from one planet to another. He had discovered that he could make a real difference in the lives of entire civilizations. In the settlement below, Warlord Vextar was training a group of young hunters in the new hybrid methods. They learned traditional tracking and combat skills, but they also learned resource management and sustainable hunting practices. It was a balance between old and new that preserved Kethvarian culture while making it more effective. Vextar had been the last to accept the changes, but the evidence was undeniable. His people were healthier, their food supplies were more reliable, and their hunting grounds were recovering instead of being depleted. Even more importantly, they were developing new skills that made them valuable trading partners with other worlds. The Galactic Commerce Union has approved our application for membership, Elder Morthek announced at the evening council meeting. We are no longer classified as a hostile predator world. We are now recognized as a developing agricultural society. This change in status would bring new opportunities for trade and cultural exchange. The Kethvarians could now sell their surplus agricultural products and handcrafted goods to other worlds, bringing in resources and technology that would help them continue developing. None of this would have been possible without the human, Kevdal pointed out. Should we not honor him in some way? We should honor him by continuing to learn and grow, Morthek replied wisely. The best tribute to a teacher is the success of his students. That night, Hyunwoo received an unexpected visitor. Thelara, the head healer, brought him a small wooden box carved with traditional Kethvarian symbols. This contains seeds from all the medicinal plants we have learned to cultivate, she explained. Take them to other worlds. Teach other people what you have taught us. It was a generous gift, but more than that, it was a sign of how much the Kethvarians had changed. They were now thinking about helping others instead of just taking from them. The next morning, the transport ship landed in the clearing where Hyunwoo's cargo vessel had crashed so long ago. The pilot, a gruff man named Captain Torres, was amazed by what he found. When we got your distress signal, we expected to find wreckage and bones, he said. Instead, we find you living like some kind of honored guest among people who are supposed to be savage predators. They are not savage, Hyunwoo corrected. They just needed to learn different ways of thinking about survival. As Hyunwoo prepared to board the transport ship, the entire settlement came to see him off. Young and old, hunters and healers, all the Kethvarians he had worked with over the past months. Will you ever come back? Asked little Rexel, Vextar's child who had been one of the first to recover from the plague. Maybe someday, Hyunwoo said, kneeling down to the child's level. But you do not need me anymore. You have everything you need to take care of yourselves and help others too. The farewell ceremony was touching, but not sad. The Kethvarians were confident in their new abilities and excited about their future. They were no longer just predators surviving day by day. They were a growing civilization with knowledge, skills, and hope. As the transport ship prepared to leave, Captain Torres asked Hyunwoo about his plans. Your cargo company wants you back, he said. They are offering you command of your own merchant fleet. That is a generous offer, Hyunwoo replied. But I have a different idea. Instead of returning to simple cargo runs, Hyunwoo proposed something new. He wanted to establish a consulting service for peaceful first contact with hostile or struggling alien civilizations. His success on Kethvar had proven that many conflicts could be solved through understanding and mutual assistance rather than force. The proposal was approved by the Galactic Commerce Union, which had been looking for alternatives to military intervention in difficult first contact situations. Hyunwoo's methods offered a way to transform potential enemies into allies and trading partners. 6 months later, the first Interspecies Survival Academy was established on Kethvar. Students from many different worlds came to learn sustainable resource management, peaceful conflict resolution, and cross-species communication skills. The Kethvarians served as both students and teachers, sharing their unique perspective on transformation and adaptation. Kevdal became the Academy's first Kethvarian instructor, teaching courses on environmental adaptation and resource identification. His success story inspired many young people from different species to consider careers in peaceful development rather than military service. Elder Morthek, now serving as Kethvar's first elected planetary leader, often reflected on the changes that had swept through their world. We thought the human was prey, he said during the Academy's opening ceremony. But prey is something that runs away and hides. This human stayed and fought, not with weapons, but with knowledge and kindness. He showed us that true strength comes not from taking life, but from supporting it, not from conquering others, but from teaching them to conquer their own limitations. Hyun-woo watched the ceremony from the audience, surrounded by students from a dozen different worlds. He had found his true calling not as a cargo pilot or a warrior, but as a bridge between species. A teacher who helped civilizations learn to provide for themselves and others. The transport ship had brought rescue, but Hyun-woo had chosen to stay, not as a prisoner or as prey, but as a provider of hope and knowledge to any who needed it. In the end, the hunt had become something entirely different, not a pursuit of prey by predators, but a search for understanding between intelligent beings who had more in common than they had ever realized. And in the red forests of Kethvar, where once only the sounds of hunting had been heard, now there were new sounds. The laughter of healthy children, the discussions of eager students, and the quiet satisfaction of a people who had learned to provide for themselves and others. The human who should have been prey had instead become the greatest provider his adopted world had ever known, and the galaxy was a better place because of it.